Well, this is a very demonic angel, and this is going to be a very fun video to make because I think that it's uniquely my thoughts. I mean, all that I share with you is, of course, influenced and inspired by so much, and I like to cite some of those influences, but I always put it together in my own way, in my own weird way. And I was just talking with somebody about this recently. I've heard, this kind of subject brought up like before in reference to genetics and witchcraft, like a grandmother passing these abilities down might skip a generation, but like the person has premonitions, and then their grandchildren do. And I mean, honestly, there's definitely a connection to some extent. There's when I'm saying this, like this whole argument or perspective I'm talking about, definitely does not downplay the influence of nurture, basically, like environmental factors, social status, stress in life, mental conditions, finances, all those things that, really make up a large part of who a person is. But then we have genetics, and there's a lot of people that, they'll be separate, and they still end up acting the same way, having very similar lives. And so it's personally interesting. I do have a sister who, she really seems, she's kind of like more frightened by these abilities, but I know that her seeing, so many dead people and having fewer paranormal experiences than me, but still having these abilities, she's not like chosen to pursue making them her life. But, she does have psychic abilities, so I definitely, I can relate on that, and then to learn that, I come from both my father and my grandfather having psychic abilities themselves. So, but like in general though, I think that the best way to explain the importance of this is that when we look at ancient people, and when we look at Native Americans would be a good way to understand this. Specifically Native Americans fighting the British, the French, Americans, Spanish, Mexicans. The men would, they knew they were going to go off and fight, and so they did ceremonies to basically invoke war, within them, and their big purpose was to go out and stop invading people, right? So my gnosis to you guys is that they definitely understood that they're going to go to war. I mean, they would know sometimes that they would be like so outnumbered, but they're very, like ancient people, very peaceful with the idea of death. And so before they go though, they a lot of times would they would perform rituals, death rituals that in ways enacts curses, ties them to the land, specifically. And they they're really after revenge. But the big, it's that masculine, aggressive revenge war. And I'd like to say too that they knew they're not coming back, most likely. But the women and the children, of course, and the old folks, they stay behind. And I think that is really interesting when you look across cultures, ranging from Native Americans to ancient people that would do this practice of, invoking death, knowing they're going off to war, probably not coming back. But the big thing is that the women survive. The women, the children, and their job is, of course, healing, homemaking, rearing children, healing, telling stories at home, all that stuff, and crafts. But the men, I think that this is like such a primal impulse that masculinity, wants to protect the group. That instinct is, it's just, it comes from the dawn of subjective consciousness of man, that a man would defend as long as the women survive. And that has to do, I do think, with ego. That is how ego ensures its survival. If the women live and they go and they get married, go off with the other people, they split up, whatever, right? They could go to other tribes, go out into regular American society and marry those people. That's still going to be a way that they can reincarnate, as long as a descendant is carrying these genetics. That is the understanding, a very deep ancient understanding that ancient and Native American people, and not just Native Americans, I mean Africans, ancient Europeans, the same setup. Look at it and it's like, that's what I really believe that's the gnosis in it. And I think that what this tells me when I've thought about it over the years is that it's our identities and our egos are so important to us that that we really are our ancestors. I mean, how many times does a great grandkid just do these exact same habits as a great grandparent? And of course, let's say you'll never know, like with my biological grandfather, he always had to have something sweet after dinner. Just a little something though, like a tablespoon or two, and he would put fruit on Jello or something, have a couple of jelly beans even. He did like that sweets. I am the same way. I don't like to eat a whole bunch of that, but I more than often, and that's been something that I've done since I was young. And I didn't know that he was my grandfather until I, was much older. So I just think that's that real key to, it really shows how, like, the line is blurred between us and, it's like we think, okay, when we die, that's the end of our experience, or, maybe you go to heaven or hell, but really, your experience is continuing to happen, and it literally does get recreated. In the case of genetics, it's very easy to understand this. And so, it's just really, as well, it's not just, go goes deeper than a tribal kind of pride, or that's, I mean, primitive, but it's just survival of the human race as well, that women need to live, that men protect women, and these kinds of ideas. But I do just think that's kind of the relevance, is just that, we all know, hey, you can be adopted. Your environment, it probably has way more to do with you than your genetics about who you are, right? But you can't discount the amount of influence that genetics have on who you are. I don't think I would be the way I am, without my genetics, just with the psychic abilities. It just comes natural to me. I understand how to travel to the astral plane and listen to the dead. It's just that comes to me like breathing. So, I mean, probably not if I was like normal, but like there's all other things that go into that too, that people just think that they're crazy, and then they choose to ignore it, and eventually they stop having this ability, they block it, or they have mental breakdowns and they can't function. Some people they can't handle it. But it's just a very, when you look at ancient people, you really do understand that there's just such a connection. And I just wanted to say to you all that no matter what your heritage, there's somebody, in your bloodline that really, they really wanted you to be here, okay? It wasn't very easy being, cavemen and even early man, but they really didn't give up at all, easy. And that's because they could never have pondered what we are now, but they knew that we had to be here. And that's part of being a connection to being an animal. We're humans, but we're also animals, and this is what we do. This is kind of how we leave our legacy on the world, our imprint. We also do it when we create anything, create projects, the fertility of your mind. It's all a big trace back to who you are. And who you are is comprised of many ancestors. And some people can speak with them, and it's almost like you have a little bit of each one of them, their personalities within you, and you can choose to tune into that. And sometimes there's some wisdom and stuff in that. So I like to kind of ponder the way ancient people might have thought. So I just thought maybe you guys would enjoy, and talk to you guys later.